Beneath the Bank of England, Mansion House, some of the priciest real estate on earth, a river still flows. The Romans built a temple to Mithras on its banks. Medieval tanners dumped waste into it. By 1600 it was buried. London's first lost river, hidden long before the Great Stink or Bazalgette's Victorian sewers. Until 2016, we'd been walking the wrong route for 600 years. We have a world exclusive on Publicity London by Pub. We're walking both branches of the lost Walbrook River, stopping at some cool historic pubs and a Marks and Spencer for a picnic in Finsbury Circus along the way. You won't find this in any guidebook. What makes a waterway so disgusting you'd want to bury it? Let's find out. I'm Expat Andy, your host, broadcasting from Miami in the Sunshine State. Experts suggest 12, 21, or 25 lost rivers in London. We'll walk the corrected route of the first river to vanish, the Walbrook. I picked the Walbrook because it's vital to the founding of Roman Londinium, the first recognized settlement that formed modern London. Buried between 1440 and 1600, the Walbrook's been underground for more than 4 centuries. Unlike most river walks, you're not going to see a drop of water. Beneath the city, the Walbrook bears witness, silenced but never still. On high ground in Islington, a lone researcher stirs a long dormant source. The western branch wakes, sniffs the strange new air, remembers the path it once carved south, toward a secret reunion beneath Finsbury Circus. Across the city, the eastern branch slinks through Hoxton, low, watchful, drawn by the same magnetic pull. Then, disruption. New tributaries surface, unexpected. Shockwaves scatter walking tour routes, maps, city engineers, and pub chatter. The story shifts. Act 1. The Walbrook, river that built Roman London. The Walbrook gets its name from Old English Wheelerbrook, Brook of the Strangers. Oddly, Anglo-Saxon invaders used Wheeler, the eventual name for the Welsh, for any indigenous people they encountered. It's ironic, newcomers from Germany and Denmark calling the original inhabitants foreigners in their own land. The name suggests that in the 5th and 6th centuries, native Britons were still living in London, even after the Romans had withdrawn. The Walbrook's deeper story begins centuries earlier, in 47 CE, when the Romans founded Londinium at its confluence with the Thames. The river cuts straight through the city. To the west, higher status Ludgate Hill became home to the Forum and later St. Paul's. To the east, Cornhill was quieter, more residential, with temples along its marshy banks. The Walbrook was vital to Roman London, providing a fresh water source, power for mills, sewer system, sacred site, and a transport route. Small boats could navigate up from the Thames, at least as far as to where Mansion House sits today. This wasn't just a stream. This was infrastructure. Centuries later, the same river would divide Anglo-Saxon settlers from the remaining Britons, named not just for the people it touched, but the ones it separated. Our website episode pages detailed the full route of the Walbrook, street by street, with accompanying maps. Act 2. How to make a river disappear. Fun fact about using a river as both your water source and your sewer. Eventually it stops being one and becomes entirely the other. By 1383, complaints began rolling into the council, when the Court of Common Council ordered aldermen to inspect latrines near the Walbrook, because of what they described as an immense amount of filth present in the river. Medieval Londoners dumped everything into their waterways, human waste, industrial runoff from tanneries and dye works, slaughterhouse offal, and dead animals. The Walbrook became what one historian called filthy, full of rubbish and sewage. Londoners had had enough of the smell. In 1440, the Lord Mayor Robert Large ordered the lower section of the Walbrook covered over. Over the next century and a half, more sections were vaulted over with brick and paved level with the streets. By 1598, the historian John Stowe wrote that houses had been built over the hidden stream. By 1600, a full 258 years before the Great Stink, and 259 years before Bazalgette even started planning his sewers, the Walbrook had completely disappeared, London's first lost river. How can a branch of a river disappear? Monks of Charterhouse Monastery, you know anything about that? Charterhouse Monastery, a Carthusian order, was founded in 1371 by Sir Walter de Manny and Bishop Michael Northbur on land next to a mass burial site from the Black Death. The site, now Charterhouse Square, was originally leased in 1348 for an emergency cemetery and chapel. The plague claimed 60% of London's population. During Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries, 1535 to 1537, the London Charterhouse was seized by the Crown. Prior John Horton refused to accept the king as head of the church and was hung, drawn, and quartered with two fellow monks. Their heads were displayed on London Bridge, and Horton's hand was nailed to the monastery gate. Most remaining monks were later executed or starved in Newgate Prison. In 1545, the estate passed to Sir Edward North, Court of Augmentations, handling confiscated monastic properties. He converted the former monastery into a grand Tudor mansion, repurposing its existing structures. The mansion later passed to several noblemen, including Thomas Howard, 4th Duke of Norfolk. Elizabeth I stayed there before her 1558 coronation and met her first Privy Council in the Great Chamber. James I also stayed before his coronation, knighting 130 men in the same room. In 1611, Thomas Sutton purchased the Charterhouse and founded a charity that still exists today, an almshouse for up to 80 poor brothers and a school for 40 boys. Notable alumni include William Makepeace Thackeray and John Wesley. The Charterhouse was badly damaged during the Blitz in May 1941. A charred half-door from the bombing is displayed at the chapel entrance. Architects John Seeley and Paul Paget restored the Charterhouse between 1945 and 1959. During the work, Sir Walter Manny's grave was discovered and is now visible in the chapel courtyard. In 2013, Crossrail excavations uncovered 25 skeletons in Charterhouse Square. One with evidence of Black Death bacteria is displayed in the museum. The Charterhouse is free to visit, but the paid tour is recommended. The museum holds a 1450 parchment map of its water system, our link to the lost western branch of the Walbrook. By 1430, the monastery, recognizing the problem of plague, grave-contaminated water, diverted Walbrook-fed springs into pipes to supply clean water. The diversion worked so well that within a generation, the western branch of the Walbrook was forgotten. For 600 years, maps and guides placed the river's origin solely to the east in Shoreditch. Then in 2016, researcher Stephen Myers made a breakthrough. The Walbrook wasn't a single stream, but two parallel branches about a mile apart, divided by a low ridge near Vestry Street. The western branch began in Barnesbury, 40 meters elevation. The eastern in Hoxton, 25 meters. They ran south for over a mile before meeting at Finsbury Circus. Myers' work doubled the Walbrook's known catchment, revealing we'd been walking only half the river for 6 centuries. Act 4, the Western Branch. From Islington to Finsbury Circus. The closest public transport is Angel Station on the London Underground, total walking distance of 3.3 miles. Islington's name derives from Ishel, signifying lower, and dun or dawn, town or fortress. Our walk begins at Angel Station. Exit Angel Station and head to a pub, The Crown at 116 Cloudsley Road, N10EB. It's close to the source of the Western Branch and the Cloudsley Square to our east. This Grade II listed pub was built and owned by the Cloudsley Estate Trust in 1821, with an endowment from Islington resident Richard Cloudsley's will. It converted first to a beer house, then a licensed pub in 1841. In 2023, trustees sold the freehold to Fuller's, the sale part of a strategy to support the Cloudsley Charities community work, ensuring the pub stays anchored in the neighbourhood. We'll head into Cloudsley Square and south through the Culpeper Community Gardens. Look to your south across Tolpuddle Street. There, just the other side of Sainsbury's, is White Conduit Street. The name comes from the gravity-fed pipe that monks used to carry water from Barnsbury to Charterhouse Monastery, marking the springs in this area that underlie this lost western branch of the Walbrook. A small white stone house once stood over the pipe. By the 17th century, a small stone structure called White Conduit House was built near the original conduit structure, functioning as an alehouse and a hotel. By 1745, there was a larger stone building with a long room, pleasure gardens, a circular fish pond, and gravelled walks with arbours. In 1754, proprietor Robert Bartholomew introduced cricket in the adjoining meadow. Another new larger structure opened in 1829 as a tea house and alehouse with live music. It was demolished in 1849, and the current neighbourhood is unrecognisable from its past. The last site of White Conduit House is marked by the former White Conduit House Tavern at 14 Barnsbury Road, N10H, on the corner with Dewey Road and southwest of Culpeper Community Gardens. It's now a Georgian restaurant. The Victorian pub building still bears the white conduit carved into its pediment. Culpeper Community Gardens sits on part of the original pleasure grounds. From 1782 to 1788, the cricket meadow hosted the White Conduit Cricket Club. Frustrated by a public footpath crossing the field, members asked club attendant and cricketer Thomas Lord to find new grounds. He secured a site at Dorset Square in Marylebone, founding the Marylebone Cricket Club in 1787 at what became Lord's Old Ground. Redevelopment forced two relocations, to Lord's Middle Ground in 1811. That was lost to the Regent's Canal development, and finally to its current site in St. John's Wood in 1814 on a slope with a duck pond. We'll cut northeast out of Culpeper Community Gardens onto Ritchie Street and up to our next pub, the Angelic at 57 Liverpool Road South, N10RJ. Opened as the George IV in 1824 and later renamed after the film The Angelic Conversation, honouring the director Derek Jarman, who lived across the street. It's a camera one-star pub due to its interior of special national historic interest. The pub's impressive late Victorian Edwardian corner design reflects a common trend. Pubs built first in new developments to house navvies and labourers. Corner locations allowed for multiple entrances, public bar, saloon, and lodging. Other historic corner pubs nearby include the Pig and Butcher at 80 Liverpool Road, N10QD, opened in 1827 as the White Horse Hotel on fields once used to rest livestock headed to Smithfield Market. The Islington Townhouse at 13 Liverpool Road, N10RW, opened in 1865 as the Agricultural Hotel, named for its proximity to the former Royal Agricultural Hall, built in 1861 for livestock exhibitions by the Smithfield Club. Leaving the Angelic, we follow the buried Walbrook southeast along Liverpool Road, lined with listed Georgian terraces and Victorian villas. Once called the Back Road, it was one of 3 historic routes meeting at the Angel Inn. From the 16th century, it crossed open countryside as a key drover's road, with cattle rested in pens called layers before reaching Smithfield Market. Turnpike toll gates were added in the 1760s, with development started soon after around Paradise Row. After the Napoleonic Wars, Liverpool Road became a focus for speculative housing, with plots leased across Barnsbury in the 1820s. Renamed Liverpool Road in 1826 after Prime Minister Robert Jenkinson, Earl of Liverpool, the area initially attracted middle-class families. With the rise of the railways, many left for the suburbs. By the 1860s, houses were divided into flats and tenements. Liverpool Road was hit multiple times during World War II, including a devastating V-2 rocket strike in December 1944 that destroyed the Prince of Wales pub, killing 68 people. Post-war, much of the housing became council-owned. By the 1960s, middle-class residents began returning, drawn by affordable homes, sparking gentrification that continues today. Notable residents include Pickwick Papers illustrator Robert Seymour, actors Derek Jarman, Jenny Logan, Anton Rogers, and Jane Stevens, bird artist Peter Palou, and Formula One journalist Lawrence Edmondson. Continuing southeast on Liverpool Road, over the Islington Canal Tunnel, dropping in elevation to the William IV at 7 Shepherdess Walk, N1 7QE, just off City Road, north up Shepherdess Walk. Built in 1838, named after the Sailor King, this beautifully restored pub was saved from demolition in the 1960s and still supports original Charrington lanterns from its Wenlock brewery days. Surrounded by Georgian terraces and tech startups, it's witnessed Islington's transformation. Back southeast on City Road to rejoin the Walbrook route, at Baldwin Street, check out 2 classic pubs. The Old Fountain at 3 Baldwin Street, EC1V 9NU. A family-run spot since the 1960s and known for Jim Durant's sandwiches. The pub is at least 200 years old and likely got its name from a local well or fountain, evidence of the buried Walbrook still flowing beneath in Victorian brick culverts. The 3 Crowns at 8 East Road, N1 6AD, a striking green-tiled corner pub dating to 1803. We're now near Old Street Roundabout, also known as Silicon Roundabout, where tech giants like Google and Amazon sit alongside co-working hubs. Southeast down East Road to rejoin City Road and the Western Branch as it flows south, under City Road to meet the Eastern Branch just south of Finsbury Circus East, roughly at 12 Blomfield Street. This ends the Western Branch of our walk. Act 5, the Eastern Branch, Shakespeare Land. Now let's jump east a mile to Hoxton, where the Walbrook's Eastern Branch begins its journey south. Hoxton appears in the 1086 Domesday Book as Hoxton, likely after a landowner, Hoke, combined ton, meaning fortified settlement. There are 2 sources for the Eastern Branch. Eastern Branch Source 1, Hoxton to Shoreditch. Our closest public transport is Old Street Station on the London Underground, a total walking distance of 1.1 miles for this section. Start our walk by exiting Old Street Station. Note the impressive terracotta and red granite building at 104 to 122 City Road. That's Imperial Hall, built in 1903 and former home of the Latian Mission. The mission was inaugurated in 1904 by Prince and Princess of Wales, the future King George V and Queen Mary. The mission provided healthcare and education to underprivileged families in the East End, predating the National Health Service and welfare state. The building's Great Queen Victoria Hall seated nearly 2,000 people, housed a magnificent organ and stunning stained glass windows by W.J. Pearce of Manchester, heavily influenced by the arts and craft movement. All were destroyed during the Blitz of World War II. In 1955, a reconstructed smaller version of the Great Victoria Hall was opened by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who acknowledged the achievements of the Latian mission. Thankfully, the building was granted Grade 2 listing in 1987. This beautiful building, complete with "Be Still My Beating Welsh Heart," its Welsh slate roof. It was converted for residential development in 1998. The grand concert hall becoming flats. Stunning stone and window details were sealed up in plaster boxes. The glorious foyers of the concert hall left as meaningless hallways. Preserved, if hidden. In 2011, building residents took over the management of their building under the RTM, or Right to Manage. RTM is a statutory right under UK law that allows leaseholders of flats to take over the management of their building from the freeholder or current managing agent. In 2013, the residents purchased the building freehold. An unusual model for the UK residential market, Imperial Hall today functions much more like a US condominium or HOA, with residents collectively owning and managing the building. By 2014, conservation policy had shifted. Architects Atalia Chang were retained by the Buildings Management Association to conduct a sensitive restoration of the building, returning its initial design. Let's get up to the start of our river walk around Cherbury Street. We're in an area heavily bombed during World War II. Post-war housing estates abound. The source of this branch of the Walbrook is under Cherbury Court on the St. John's Estate near the Cranston Estate. Before World War II, the area around New North Road and Cherbury Road on the Islington side of Pitfield Street formed part of a densely developed Victorian neighbourhood, characterised by terraced housing and mixed residential and commercial uses. Some Victorian terraces remain further up New North Road at 237 to 263, but as you walk southeast down New North Road, by the time you reach Shoreditch Park, you'll no doubt notice the sheer numbers of brick post-war estate housing. The scale of the bomb damage is unbelievable. What this area must have endured during the Blitz, it's heartbreaking. It's easy to be critical of this style of housing in modern times, but imagine the housing crisis in post-war London. Let's consider the context. Across London during the Second World War, roughly 200,000 houses were destroyed, 250,000 made uninhabitable, and 3 million damaged. A displaced population needed replacement housing fast. Social housing, known in the UK as council housing, was the solution. Between 1945 and 1949, the London County Council, LCC, built 44,000 new homes in London alone. At the source of the Walbrook branch that we're walking today, we have these examples of post-war council housing replacing earlier Victorian terraces, and yes, also their Victorian pubs. Wilkinson House, Cranston Estate, 2 6-story slab blocks with balcony access, 36 dwellings. Crondall Court and Cherbury Court on the St. John's Estate, 2 11-story H-plan blocks, 44 dwellings each. Under the Right to Buy program established by the Housing Act of 1980, a flagship policy of Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government, giving secure council tenants a statutory right to purchase their homes at a significant discount, many former council houses have since passed into private ownership. As we leave this area, cut west on Cherbury Street and stop at the pub on the corner with New North Road. Not all historic pubs sit in a Tudor, Georgian, Victorian, or Edwardian listed building. Some pubs survive as historic records of a different era. We're looking at one such important pub right now. The Beehive at 36 New North Road, N1 6TE. The Beehive is a beloved working-class neighbourhood pub, so humble it doesn't even have a website. Look at the online reviews. People really like this pub. Clearly, such pubs are equally as important as listed buildings when it comes to the community support they offer. There has long been a pub on this site. Records show a Beehive pub at the original address of Stevens Place, New North Road, in 1856. This was lost during the Blitz. Street layout changed during post-war construction, and developers gifted the community with another Beehive pub at the base of a block of council flats known as Nevitt House. With a nod back to early alehouse hotels, the modern Beehive pub also has en-suite accommodations. Nevitt House was built by the LCC in 1950 as part of a 3-tower block public housing development on the Cranston estate. The blocks consist of a total of 118 dwellings and are respectively known as Marshall House, Trafford House, and Nevitt House. Nevitt House was a 40-dwelling extension to an already existing 5-story block. Continue southeast down New North Road, cut south onto Pitfield Street. This street, likely named after nearby burial fields from the Great Plague of 1665 to 1666. As with the rest of this neighbourhood, it became lined with Georgian and Victorian terraces as Hoxton urbanised from the end of the Stuart era in the late 1600s. In 1690, the Worshipful Company of Haberdashers established Aske's Hospital on Pitfield Street, almshouses, and a school funded by merchant Robert Aske. One of the city's 12 historic livery companies, the Haberdashers began as a medieval guild for silk and velvet merchants. Chartered in 1448, with records dating to 1371, the company later shifted from trade oversight to charitable and educational work. Pitfield Street also hosted key community landmarks. The Passmore Edwards Free Library, now the Grade II listed Courtyard Theatre, served the public for decades. Nearby, the Varieties Music Hall, designed by C.J. Phipps, opened around 1870 at 18 to 20 Pitfield Street, part of Hoxton's lively Victorian entertainment scene. Pause at the George and Vulture at 63 Pitfield Street, N1 6BU, a classic Victorian corner pub that miraculously escaped the Luftwaffe and dates to 1870. This gabled building almost looks Dutch in style and is self-titled the tallest pub in London. The original address of the pub was 35 Haberdashers Street, reflecting the role of the Worshipful Company of Haberdashers in the area. The neighbourhood was heavily bombed during World War II, yet the pub survived. Cut down to Great Eastern Road, taking Rivington Street east to the end of this section of our walk, the confluence of the Eastern Branch Source 1 with Eastern Branch Source 2 at Charlotte Road. For this section of our walk, our closest public transport is Hoxton London Overground, a total walking distance of 0.9 miles. This branch has its source in the Hoxton Springs, close to Enfield Cloisters. Exit Hoxton Station at Cremer Street, head northwest up to Hoxton Hall at 130 Hoxton Street, N1 6SH. Built in 1863 as MacDonald's Music Hall, this Grade II listed building is one of the few surviving saloon-style halls with a 2-tier iron-railed gallery supported by cast iron columns. Music halls evolved from 18th century coffee houses, saloon bars, and taverns, where men met for business over food and drink. Some venues began focusing on entertainment, offering dedicated performance spaces. By the 1850s, full-fledged music halls offered popular songs, variety acts, and theatre, providing working-class audiences a chance to relax amid the bustle of the industrial age. Lively and bawdy, MacDonald's Music Hall likely ruffled feathers in its neighbourhood. In 1871, it lost its performance license after police complaints and efforts to reopen it failed. In 1879, philanthropist William Isaac Palmer of the Huntley and Palmer biscuit family bought the hall for the Blue Ribbon Gospel Temperance Mission, a prospect sure to put Dry January and Baby in a corner. After Palmer's death, the hall was passed to the Quaker-run Bedford Institute. Today it thrives as a community and performance venue. Head south on Hoxton Street and stop at numbers 104 to 146. Look across to the corner building at 260 Crondell Street. Just below the artwork, high up on the wall as usual, is a London plaque that reads, London Borough of Hackney, the Gunpowder Plot. In a house near this site on 12th October 1605, Lord Monteagle received a letter unmasking the plot by Guy Fawkes to blow up the Houses of Parliament. It's hard to imagine now, but in 1605, this area was beyond London's edge. Open fields, tracks, and scattered houses. One such house stood nearby, lodgings for Lord Monteagle, where he received the letter that revealed the infamous plot. In October 1605, an anonymous letter was delivered to William Parker, 4th Baron Monteagle, at the site where 260 Crondall Street now stands. It warned him to avoid the upcoming state opening of Parliament. Monteagle shared the letter with Robert Cecil, the King's chief minister, prompting a search of the House of Lords from the 4th to the 5th of November. There, Guy Fawkes was discovered, guarding barrels of gunpowder, uncovering the gunpowder plot to kill King James I and destroy Parliament. The likely author of the letter was Francis Tresham, Monteagle's brother-in-law, a late recruit to the gunpowder plot, and cousin to ringleader Robert Catesby, linking the conspirators directly to the letter's recipient. Continue south on Hoxton Street to the Macbeth at 70 Hoxton Street, London, N1 6LP. Built in the mid-1800s as a pub with an attached distillery, likely producing gin using Walbrook spring water. Originally called the White Hart, it was renamed the Macbeth in 1978 after the Shakespearean tile mural inside. It became a key indie music venue, hosting acts like Florence and the Machine, Franz Ferdinand, the XX, Pete Doherty, and the Fontaines DC. In 2025, new owners Jamie Allen and Patrick Nolan revived it with a Portuguese-inspired gastropub twist. Cross Old Street to Curtin Road, a quick detour east to 83 Rivington Street under the Kingsland Viaduct railway arches to see an original Banksy artwork. Then return west on Rivington. Pause at the Barley Mow at 127 Curtin Road, EC2A 3BX, a classic East End pub that began as a beer house in 1856, typical of many terraced pubs in the area. This branch walk ends on Rivington Street at Charlotte Road. Eastern Branch sources 1 and 2, continuing as 1 to Eastern Branch Epworth Tributary. Closest public transport for this section of our walk is Shoreditch High Street on the London Overground, total walking distance of 0.8 miles. We're going to exit Shoreditch High Street Overground Station and head up to the Boundary Estate to pause at Arnold Circus at the bandstand. The Boundary Estate was built between 1890 and 1900 on the site of the notorious Old Nickel Slum. The estate was designed by Owen Fleming to house the deserving poor. It has 1,069 red brick flats arranged around Arnold Circus, including communal laundries, shops, and schools. Though a vast improvement on the appalling slums that were in the area, the Boundary Estate displaced many of the original residents. Now largely council-owned, the Grade 2 listed estate remains a vibrant, close-knit community, architecturally distinct from other post-war social housing projects seen earlier in Hoxton. We'll exit the Boundary Estate, taking Arnold Circus anti-clockwise, and cut back over to Charlotte Road, where the eastern and western branches continue on as one. Back out onto Curtin Road to stop at the corner with New Inn Yard. Here, Great Eastern Street cuts a swath across a historic section down to Holywell Lane and Curtin Road. The name Holywell says it all. In the 1150s, monks built Holywell Priory around a spring. When Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries in 1539, the priory was closed, and the land, just outside city jurisdiction, became available. By 1572, with theatres banned within the city due to plague fears, this area became the birthplace of modern theatre, as entrepreneurs built permanent playhouses just beyond the city limits. We'll stop at the Old Blue last, at 38 Great Eastern Street, EC2A 3ES. Built in 1700 on the site of James Burbage's The Theatre of 1576. Over the years, it's been a shoemaker's haunt, a Truman's rebuild, strip club, and gangster hangout. Today, it's run by Vice Media, a live music venue that's hosted Arctic Monkeys, Amy Winehouse, and Florence and the Machine. Cross back over Great Eastern Street, continue south on Curtin Road, following the buried path of the Eastern Branch beneath one of the most modern districts in London. Stop at the Horse and Groom at 28 Curtin Road, EC2A 3NZ. Built in the early 1800s, it marks the entrance to the lost Curtin Theatre, once a Charrington pub and now run by Green King. In 2011, archaeologists uncovered remains of the Curtin Theatre. Soon the Museum of Shakespeare will open here, featuring an elevated glass platform over the site of the theatre. The Curtin Theatre opened in 1577 on nearby Hewitt Street, named after Curtin Close, a walled pasture of the old priory. The name refers to a defensive curtain wall, not stage curtains. From 1597 to 1599, the Curtin Theatre was home to Shakespeare's company, likely the site of the premiere of Romeo and Juliet. We'll conclude this section of our walk at Worship Road, where the Epworth tributary joins the Eastern Branch. The Eastern Branch Epworth tributary, closest public transport, Old Street London Underground, with a total walking distance 0.6 miles. Exit Old Street Station south on City Road, east on Epworth Street to Paul Street, the source of the Epworth tributary. Then head east on Scrutton Street to the Old King's Head at 28 Holywell Row, London EC2A 4JB. This cosy green tile-fronted pub retains its Victorian charm. A ghost story involving two girls haunts its cellar. But locals love it for its grit and soul amidst tech-driven redevelopment. Down Holywell Row and Clifton Street, east on Worship Street to the junction with Curtin Road, where the tributary joins the Eastern Branch at the Queen of Hoxton pub. At 91 to 101 Worship Street, you'll see a rare Grade 2 star listed terrace of artisan craftsman dwellings, built by arts and craft pioneer Philip Webb between 1861 and 1863. Each unit combined living quarters, shop front, and rear workshop, replacing former slums. Webb even added a drinking fountain here, likely fed by the buried Epworth tributary below. Stop at the Queen of Hoxton at 1 Curtin Road, EC2A 3JX, named in honor of Victorian actress and theatre manager Sarah Lane, the original Queen of Hoxton. She ran the Grand Britannia Theatre, which opened in 1841, once seating 4,000 and admired by Dickens. Though the theatre was destroyed in World War II, the current owners of the Queen of Hoxton pub, Andy Maddox and John Ross, continue the area's theatrical legacy with eclectic performances and a themed rooftop venue over the pub. Before we leave this area, consider Shoreditch. Once a village along the old Roman road, it remained open marshy fields in Henry VIII's time, drained by windmills and popular with archers. The name likely comes from the Shoreditch family, lords of the manor under Edward III, not from the myth of Jane Shore, Edward IV's mistress, dying here in a sewer ditch. This concludes our section of the Eastern Branch Epworth Tributary Walk at its confluence with Eastern Branch 1 and 2 at Worship Street and Curtin Road. We've walked both branches of the Walbrook, the long-lost Western Branch and the remembered Eastern, stretching from Islington's Heights and Hoxton Springs through Charterhouse, Shakespeare's theatres, and historic pubs. Now we acknowledge both branches flow south toward their meeting point at Finsbury Circus before making their final journey through the city to the Thames. In our next episode, part 2 of this walk, we'll follow the final stretch of the unified Walbrook to its hidden outflow beneath Cannon Street Station at the Banker Pub. If you've walked every section from part 1, you've covered 5.9 miles. Part 2 adds 4.8 miles for a full Walbrook walk of 10.7 miles. Please support the pubs that we've stopped along the way. They're London's memory keepers. I'm Expat Andy, and this has been Publicity, London by Pub. And no need to keep you in suspenders. Part 2 of our walk drops today. Thank you for listening. Remember, every pub, every neighborhood has a story to tell if you know where to look.